What up, and welcome back to, you already know what it is, Bossy Behavior. And Stealing Behaviors to help you become what? The boss. Just gonna invite a few people and we'll get started. Let go. Hey guys, I came back to people. Hi Pam, what's up Leah? Hey Taylor, what's up guys? Just gonna give it a second because I was reading today that the Instagram algorithm changed over the weekend. And they're like making people wait longer for notifications for lives, which is just a little irritating. But I posted about, thanks Leah, I posted about Cinderella last week a lot. And y'all know how I feel when I talk about preaching princesses. Listen, it's a personal soapbox of mine too. Because so many people literally, hey Jazz, hey Shar, so many people literally demonize princesses in church culture, and it's just not true. I've read so many princess books over my life. Okay, and so I get a lot of prophetic inspiration from them, as well as the movies. What's up? Come on in, add a friend. I never really ask you guys to do that, but today I feel like very fiery about it. Especially the part of Cinderella's story that I'm going to talk about. It's her final contention. And I think that just prophetically, a lot of people really like the video when I posted it, because it's like you don't really pay attention sometimes when you watch these movies as kids or even as an adult. You're just like, okay, I already know the story. But Cinderella's story is particularly interesting to me because if you look at the character of, I can't even wait. I'm just going to dive in. So if you look at the character of Cinderella as a person, even in the original fairy tale, which is a precautionary tale to children, by the way. So some of the stuff in the final scene in the book is a little bit more graphic than what Disney did. But she never uttered a disrespectful word, a mean word. She never had a comeback. She never had a jab. Nothing. All she had was honor for those that wickedly and deceitfully abused her for years upon years upon years. What's up, Marvelous? And I think that it's so important that we look at some of her fight and some of the contending that she did was from the place, hey Janiyah, that she didn't even utter a word. She had every tool that she needed to come into the promise that she had without slandering others, without coming against them, without talking about it. There's only one moment in her story where she has a breakdown, and that's at the darkest moment in her story, okay? So it's funny, I just heard someone like, really? You're really going to preach Cinderella? Yes, I am. Hi, Becca. You're new, right? You come from Steven's Live, I think. Hey, I'm Sweet Nay. So I think it's funny that, people say, oh, princesses, they just sit there and they wait for someone to rescue you. In all actuality, Cinderella had no hopes of being rescued. She didn't even think about it. She didn't think about what it would be like outside of her life. She just really wanted one night of fun, right? She just really wanted to experience the ball, which everyone had a right to go to. Now, here's the thing. She bargained with her evil stepmother to go. She worked hard for it. She even had little friends that put together a dress for her so that she would be appropriately dressed to go. Her hope was only in the thing that was reachable at the moment. Oh, sorry, hold on. Wow. That really hurt. Yes, her name does mean ashes. I had that in my notes. Okay, Becca, I'm rolling with you. Come on, new girl. Hey, Cruz. Hey, what's up? So, she works all day. She slaves. She doesn't say anything against what they give her to do. It's in the book, because if you're new here, I am like a collector of books. I love stories. And so I've always grown up reading fairy tales and fantasy books and all that kind of stuff. So in the book, they even give her double the work to do, right? So she would present the clean clothes and they would make them dirty. They threw them in the pig pen in the mud and said, clean them again, right? There was double the work to do that day. Plus, they were working against her. She never opened her mouth to curse the situation. She was just determined to get to the thing that she wanted and desired the most. Now, let's just pause there on that fact, because some of you have not been able to reach what you want to get to based on the fact that you're unwilling to work in the space that you have agreed to come into. And so there's a disconnect. Yes, we're talking about Cinderella today. There's a disconnect between you and what you're willing to do to get to the place that you say that you want to be at. Yeah. It's a problem already, huh? So I think that the interesting fact about her is that when she finally gets there, right? She gets dressed. She runs. She actually asks them for affirmation. It's one of the things that I see as problematic for her, because she's asking the people who are evilly wicked towards her whether it's good enough. Who are you talking to that you're asking affirmation from, that are literally speaking against? Hi, Lisa. That are literally speaking against the thing that you're called to do, the thing that you are meant to be at, the place that you're supposed to be in, but you're trying to get affirmation from them. For what reason? She called attention to herself in that moment, right? And this is what produced the moment where she becomes devastated, because she asked the wrong people to affirm her. So they call attention and they see, oh, wait, you're using my old scraps. Oh, wait, I threw that dress away, but you didn't have a right to put it on your dress. I threw that necklace away, but you didn't have a right to wear it because it's just my trash, but you can't have it. So they destroy her dress, right? They rip her to shreds. They're like, no, this is mine. This is mine. That's mine. Because honestly, the evil stepmother knew if Cinderella went to that ball because she was so beautiful, the attention, hey Joshua, the attention would not have stayed where she wanted it to stay, because their goal was to go to the ball to get a husband. But Cinderella's goal was to go have an enjoyable night. She didn't even show up there for a husband. She was trying to show up there just to have some fun, because her life was nothing but slavery at that point. Don't seek affirmation from the wrong people. What's up, Kayvon? Hey, Kara. And so the thing is that her heart posture and her motivation and her faith to believe that she could get there is what presented the opportunity for her to go. And so sometimes I think that if we look at her story, you can look at, have you been faithful when people have literally spoken against you and been wicked, or do you allow that to forfeit you out of the place that you're supposed to be in, even though there's trial and tribulation? The very word contention means to have an heated argument or debate regarding the subject at matter. Right? So if we talk about contending for our prophetic word, Yes. If we talk about contending for our prophetic word, and you expect it to be calm, quiet, you expect not an eyesight of storm, you expect everyone to affirm you and to be in good graces with you, and to think that, oh my gosh, this is just, let's all support the man or woman of God and the thing that God said about them, then you have an unrealistic expectation of what contending looks like. And just from the standpoint of the intercessor side of me, there is a fight and a war in the spirit sometimes that will take a meek and humble spirit for you to be able to remain faithful in the thing that seems to be coming against you. Hi, sister, I love you. But I think that it is important for you to look at that Cinderella's response, even in the midst of contention, was, I have nothing to say. I will be humbly quiet about it. And I just really desired this thing. I will, marvelous. Be encouraged. So I think that it's so important for you to look at this moment in her story as it was the darkest moment that she could have reached. Her hopes were up. Her desires were aligned. She did all of the work that she could. She didn't say anything against the people that were attacking her. She somehow produced a dress. She somehow produced a place for her to be able to go to this dream that she had of just having a good night, and it was destroyed. So, a lot of people, a lot of Christians have a problem with me preaching Cinderella, especially because it has magic in it. But I like to think of the fairy godmother's representation of how Holy Spirit would be in your life, right? And so Holy Spirit comes through, she gets to go, she has to follow these rules. That means 12 o'clock. Y'all know how the story goes, right? She literally runs down the stairs. Now, here's the funny thing. In one of the spin-off of this fairy tale, they say that she left the shoe on purpose, which I think is hilarious too, because I'm like, that would be great. No, Amber, I'm just preaching Cinderella. Sorry, I'm in a flow. So that's why I didn't pause to tell you. So I think that it's just interesting that she kind of leaves the shoe, but she has one shoe. It's the only thing that doesn't disappear. Everything else goes back to what it was. But because the shoes were created for her, the shoe was created to fit only her foot, they did not disappear. The dress disappeared. The dress went back to normal because it was created out of the dress she was wearing. She didn't have shoes on. Okay, that's an important detail in the book. The shoe was made for her. So with the... Sorry, I got distracted. Jesus help. With the carriage, it was a pumpkin. It smashed into a different pumpkin. When the mice turned into horses, they went back to mice. Right? Everything else was created from something else that was around her. The shoes were created for her. She didn't have shoes on. She ran out into the field without shoes. So the glass slippers were assigned to her, that this was more than a moment. It was more than a dance. It was more than the ball that she was supposed to attend. She never expected to even dance with the prince, right? That's part of the miracle of that story, is that she goes in and she was not meant to even dance with the prince, but he saw her from afar. He saw her and knew that something was special about her. In the book, he had seen her before, but she wouldn't give him her name, because she knew that he would find out that she was a slave. That she was a servant girl of this household. Which, I mean, in the very origin of the story too, she lost everything. She was actually a high-born woman, and she lost everything when her father died. So, that to me is very interesting. So, we get to this. So, I'm giving you all this background because I'm really going to go in on the final contention for her. So, she doesn't share it with her with her stepsisters. She, they're talking about it all through the house. Where's this ugly girl who's dancing with the prince? All this stuff, right? She just holds on to the memory of it. She actually buries the shoe in the book and the cinders of the fireplace to hide it from them. And she never expects anything to come of it. She never thinks that anything else will happen for her. She was just happy with the thing that she wanted. But she hears her stepsisters talk about, made me think of Job, had everything, lost everything, then got blessed. Yep, true. And I've been on Job lately. Hey, Michaela. And so literally, she hears her stepsisters talk about how they're going to be trying this shoe on for everybody, right? The prince wants to marry the girl with the glass slipper. And that's when she digs up the shoe and she keeps it in her apron the whole time. Now her stepmother figures it out because she's just like walking around like, so this is love. So this is love, right? She's just super excited about it. And here's the thing. Hey, Eve. She's like, oh no. She's got something going on. In the book, she puts her in the cellar with no food, no water, nothing. Locks her in there with every intention of never bringing her out. In the movie, they made it cute where she's like, oh, I'll come get you later once he's gone. No, she locked her in the cellar to die. And, at that moment, in the book, Cinderella doesn't cry. She literally starts coming up with ways to try and get out of the cellar. And I think that it's interesting because there's a lot of moments I feel like we get into when it comes to contending. And we think, oh, okay, if someone locks me in a cellar, if the enemy tries to cover me in darkness, then am I going to find my way out, or am I just going to lay there and cry? Am I going to lay there and die? Am I going to lay there and complain about the situation that's at hand? So instead of complaining, and when she couldn't find the way or the place of the key, when she couldn't find a way out, she had to call for help. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, she called animals. Yeah, she called animals, right? But who can you call for help in the session of your contention? Are you trying to do it alone? Are you trying to... Are you trying to create a way for your own instead of calling for help? Questions that need answers. Yeah. And so, I like to look at that moment where, like, she just didn't even give up in that moment. Because all she knew was that the shoe had to fit on her foot, and it was going to fit her foot because she was the one that they were made for. Now, here's the gross and graphic part of the novel, okay? The novel version, the stepsisters know that their feet are way bigger than Cinderella's. So one of them cuts off the other one's heel. Well, listen, those that try to intimidate you or become you will have to forfeit and cut flesh for them to try and be you. Laughed after smacking us with this word. I can't. I know. I just always laugh because it's just me. The other sister, they cut off her toes to try and fit. Right? Everything to fit into a slipper that was never made for them. Never made for them. Who does that? Desperate people. And that's what the enemy does a lot of the time. They will be desperate. You laugh too, that's funny. The enemy will be desperate, and he will send any way of attack to come to you so that you can forfeit because someone else is tried to fit into your shoes and it feels uncomfortable for them to try to be placed in the area that you were actually called to be in. It's graphic and it's gross, right? But that's how desperate they were. Because honestly, it's like they were in a highborn position, right? Their life was good enough, but they needed to be a princess for their mother to have control over the kingdom. Oh, I'm glad you needed this word. I feel like I haven't even got to the good part yet. They needed the positioning of being the princess that would one day become a queen. Desperate and dehydrated, Joshua, yes. And literally, the mother was just trying to gain political control in the book. She just wanted political control. So she was even using her own daughters to try to get to a place that she could never get to. How many people know of people, or maybe you live under this, where it's a like living vicariously through you moment, right? I know leaders that do that too, right? So you feel like you just don't fit into an assignment. That's not your place. But they put you in that place so that they can have some kind of control or power over the arena that they're trying to set you in. The Stepsisters preach too. The Stepsisters preach too. So I think that's important that we evaluate that in this moment, there are so many things happening. The war was not just within Cinderella to get to the position for her to try the shoe on, but it was also a contention on the stepsister side, the wicked side, to come up with every way of attack to prevent this from happening and to steal or rob the seat that Cinderella was supposed to sit in the whole time. So, the guy comes, he's like the guard, he's like, hey, I'm trying shoes on. They try to fit the shoe. He notices that the one that cut off her toes, that her foot is bloodied. He's like, well, what is this? So they unwrap her foot. He's like, hey, this is bloody. What are those little things? That's a new emoji. Her foot is bloodied. He's like, hey, your foot's bloody. What's going on? And so he's just like, he's honestly trying to get out of there. The stepmother is trying to convince or manipulate him the whole time and say, oh no, you're not putting the shoe on right. Try it this way. Random, but I don't know why I love the background with clothes. I know it's a vibe, huh? It's a curated Pinteresty vibe. So he's like, I'm just trying to get out of here at this point. Well, Cinderella has had help from her friends, the animals, right? The birds and the mice. They get her out, and she comes around the corner just as he's about to leave, and she's like, "Wait, sir, please wait." Like, I want to try the shoe on too. And he's like, oh yes. And he actually notices in the book, it's so very much highlighted that he notices that her feet are petite, that her feet are small because the glass slipper was so small. And that's how everyone else in the kingdom didn't fit into the slipper. It wasn't that anybody else's foot was too small. It was all recorded that they were too big. They did not fit into this shoe because it was too big. It's like they couldn't even get part of their foot into them. Like her feet were that tiny. So, the last-ditch effort of the wicked stepmother and the evil stepsisters was to throw dirt on Cinderella's name. So they literally started, telling her bye. They started telling her, no, you can't be down here. She's nobody. She's just a chambermaid. Oh, she's a slave. She's a servant girl that works here. Don't look at her. No one pays attention to her. She didn't even go to the ball, right? And he cannot be denied because his orders were to try on the shoe on every eligible maiden within the land. Now, here's the thing. When a king gave an order, because that's who gave the order, right? When a king gives an order, an edict, even it's called in our history time, it cannot be denied or you will lose your head. I'm gonna let that sink in for a minute. The order cannot be denied because you will lose your head. So this particular guard, the advisor to the king, knew. That's how they did David. Pretty much. He knew that if he did not try the shoe on every eligible maiden that he knew of, that he could lose his head. He knew if he messed up his assignment, the orders from the king, that his neck would be on the line. That's what you don't get in the Disney version. But it's true. And so when you look at this, if our king gives an order, if he gives a prophetic word, it cannot be denied. It cannot be otherwise. because he said it. So it has to be fulfilled. So, you know, he's like, yes, we're going to try this shoe on her, right? I can't stay longer. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll save it. You know, I save mine. Unless Instagram automatically deletes them, but hopefully this one saves. So, literally, as she sits down and she's excited again, the guard that's carrying the shoe is tripped by the evil stepmother. The glass slipper breaks into a million pieces. He panics. He's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? My head. What is the king going to do to me? There's no way I can go back to him and say, I'm sorry, your son can't be married because I broke the glass slipper, because I allowed this to happen on my watch. Like, there's no hope in that moment. And she tries to interrupt him. It's on my timeline. You guys can go watch it again. She tries to say, oh, but I can help. And he's like, nothing can help this. There is no way that this situation can be helped. But she already had the answer because the shoes were made for her. So she literally pulls it out of her pocket and says, oh, but you see, I have the other slipper. It literally was made for her. She owned it, she carried it, and in that moment she took authority, and the final contention and argument as to who she would be and who she was called to sit with and where she was called to reign came to an end because she pulled out the answer. She already had the solution. Hey, Dom. Yes, equipped. She was already equipped with the tools that she needed for the moment. But imagine if when she was in the cellar, she didn't call for help. And imagine if when she came home from the ball, she was disappointed because nothing else happened. And imagine if she would have literally been distracted by all of the evil things that her wicked family was saying to her. Imagine if she didn't have the courage to call out and say, hey, I am an eligible maiden. Hey, I want to try the slipper on. Like, hello. If she thought of herself just as a servant girl, if she thought of herself as a chambermaid, what would that look like? Thanks for typing that. I'm actually going to screenshot it because I don't even know what I'm saying. I'll use it for a graphic. Literally, she owned it, she carried it, she took authority over it. The shoe fit perfectly. She was instantly taken out of the environment she was in. They didn't let her grab a possession in the book. They didn't say she went and gathered her belongings. They didn't say that she revisited her old cellar room or where she laid by the cinders to stay warm because they couldn't even give her a blanket. She didn't take anything with her. She went willingly into her next. Willingly into her next. I think that sometimes we get to the end of promises. We get to the very moment. Love you too. We get to the very moment of where things can become challenging. When all of hell is fighting against you. And you forget that you have all of heaven's angel armies fighting for you. Right. From codependent to kingdom. And I think that, like, her humility provided this space because in the book it talks about how it was like her conversation as well that helped. Hey, Natalie. The conversation she carried was what helped the prince understand her. They had had conversations in the book. She just wouldn't give him her name. Kept bumping into her in the forest. She was doing her duties, right? And in the movie, they try to make it where it's like there's this one moment where she had to dance. But literally, her wisdom and humility produced a place for her to sit in the seat she was called to. So yes, he was struck by her beauty as well. But it wasn't necessarily the place where it just was captured by this one magical moment. So yes, Cinderella preaches, especially the book. Because she used unusual ways to contend for her miracle. Her willingness to serve those who despised her was a weapon of warfare for her. Her ability to turn away wrath with a soft answer was a weapon of warfare for her. Her ability to call for help was a weapon of warfare for her. The favor she found even in the towns, like in the book, she would have to go to town to go get like supplies, right? And there was favor there for her. People spoke of her highly. Yeah, the new live motion one, I only saw it once, but yeah, I need to watch it again. You know, I think in the part that I just zoomed in on when he said that was when he's pushing her on the swing and they're having a really amazing conversation, right? She just had wisdom that reminded him of his mother, right? The way she carried herself reminded him of his mother. And that is something that other people didn't have. They came to him with desperation. They were like thirsty. I'm thirsty, right? And she was just like, hey, it was cool to dance with you, but have you thought about this in the kingdom? And, you know, she just like had ideas. And when he asked her opinion, she said so with a kind answer, right? And I think that a lot of times for us, when we get into these warfare moments, we may feel like, okay, it's not going to happen. So we're just swinging tooth and nail and backlash and fighting and doing and saying whatever. But there is strength in being still and knowing who God is and knowing what you're promised. I also like how she enjoyed her journey, even though all of it wasn't great, right? I mean, virtually she was taking care of 3 people's lives that were very, very mean to her, but she found joy in doing the task that she was given. She did not let it ruin her day just because the place she was in didn't recognize who she was. Didn't bow to the authority that she had. She didn't try to make it about either. She just was herself. She decided to be unshakable and unmoved. You're my fairy godfather with this message, godmother with this message. That's hilarious. You know, and so a lot of people will turn princess stories into these, you know, it's fantasy and someone's coming to rescue. Nobody rescued Cinderella. Cinderella stayed true to the character that her mother and father instilled to her before their deaths. Her mother told her on her deathbed to truly, I think it was like, be light and always be kind. Right? And so it never left her. Always be kind. 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 That's when you truly shine. When you let others see you truly. That's where you shine. Always be kind. Always be kind. Hey, Monica. And so when it comes to how you contend for the prophetic word over your life, I think that it is imperative that you don't look at what other people would do to get to where you're trying to get to. Because desperation will have you doing things. Like I said, the stepsisters cut off their heel and the other one cut off their toes to try and fit into this shoe. But it will have you cutting off body parts, having you be inauthentic. It will have you tearing yourself apart to get into places and spaces to manipulate by your hand what the Lord can do if you just stay faithful, unshakable, unmovable, and know that in your kindness, He is producing a pathway for you. And your steadfastness, there you go. He is producing a way for you. And your undying devotion to what he has called you to be and the places that he has called you to reign, that there is no way that that seat can be forfeited unless you decide to forfeit it. There is no way that someone can rob you. They may speak all manner of evil against you. The chatter may rise really high. People may come against the way that you're operating, the modality in which you choose to do things, but they are just speaking. Those words must fall to the ground, because just like Cinderella, you already got the shoe in your pocket. You already know, oh, but I got the other slipper. There is a strategy for you. There is a way that is being made in this particular time for the word that he is birthing over your life, and these moments that will open up if you just stay steadfast and unmovable, steadfast and unshakable, steadfast and not speaking against your promise, steadfast and not cursing the thing that he said was yours, steadfast and believing that no good thing he would withhold from you. God desires to not withhold things from us. He desires to give us good gifts. All things are assembling for your good. And if you believe that God has placed you in a season of goodness, then how can you speak against the goodness that is coming into fruition as all the puzzle pieces are flying together? You know, the thing about puzzles, and why I've never really truly deeply been a fan of them too much, is because it's a picture that is scattered, and you have to try different angles to put it all together so that it can complete this vision that you have one picture of, right? And sometimes that's how prophetic words look, as truly being a seer. Like, that's how prophetic words look sometimes. There is a blurry picture, or a picture that is in pieces, that you get a moment of clarity of. But when you decide to intercede and contend in that space, to put the pieces together in the spiritual of the steps that God would have you to take to literally come into the fulfilled promise of your prophetic word, then there is, hey, Janet, love you. I have to get together with you soon. When you come into this place where your pieces are now starting to materialize, right? And it feels like there's a storm swirling around you, and you may not understand how this thing can come together, because it is the enemy's last moment of desperation, and it is literally a battle and a fight, and there's literally something contending against you from getting to that place. If you say, oh, well, these pieces are just swirling, let me just stop so that everything can stop swirling, then you literally stop the process of everything assembling together for your good. Assembly means that one piece at a time is added, right? Even if we think about assembly lines when things are created, right? A car, when it's put on an assembly line, someone works on the doors, other people put the engine in, someone puts on the undercarriage, right? A transmission, it has to be added piece by piece to become the machine in which we drive. Those pieces also have to be checked that they're in the right position and that they were created properly, or else what happens? What happens if the cars are made too fast? Then we get a recall, right? Like one year, I remember there was a recall on some cheap little car about airbags, because they were killing people or suffocating them when they were going off. They were put in not properly. They were rushed on the line. I read weird articles, don't mind me, guys. But they were put on the line, and they were pushed out fast because the company was going to go under. And it literally cost lives. So sometimes we are rushing the assembly line of our process based on what people say, based on the timeline in our own head, the pressure that we feel from hell, the pressure of the process that can feel like it's crushing you, literally taking the life out of you because you just want it to be over. But there is something that is produced in you in the midst of the process. There is endurance that's produced in you. There is humility that is produced in you. There is new levels of learning and growth and stability that will bring you to a place of fulfillment. And when you walk into fulfillment, you won't crumble or crush underneath it, because you have gone through the process to be able to properly receive it. It's interesting that even in socioeconomic statuses, like a person that doesn't have to earn, work, or process into developing an idea will oftentimes lack creativity, because they have no framework of how creativity works. This is just like reading statistics and learning business stuff that I have learned before, right? And so they have to hire out people. There's literally people that have the money to get a company going. They literally have the money. They have one base idea, but they have no idea how to put it together. They have no idea how to continue developing it, but they have the funds to do so. Right? And so a lot of times they will develop the idea to the place that they can and then sell it to someone who can manage it, or hire out on for others or creatives to come in and be able to produce the idea that they had, and with the funding that they have, be able to pay this person less than what they would have been able to make if they had originally came up with the idea. And that's how some of us act when it comes to prophetic words, because your pastor has always prayed for you, because you've gotten prophetic words from ministers and prophets and all these people, and you've been supported and handheld for so long that you don't even know the process of contending for the thing that you really deeply, truly, actually, factually are supposed to walk into, and the pain or the pressure of stepping into it feels like too much because it's always been done for you, or you've had the resources of support. And I'm not saying that community and have, because I got a pastor, all right, I got community, right, and I need support, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to rise up and to speak to God about the thing that he's called me to be, to speak to me about the things that he has resourced in my life, to speak to me about the engine, what word? Okay, the innovation that he's placed on the inside of me. And so I think that for a lot of us, there is a missing component with your contention over your word. You have people that are speaking for you. You have people that are praying for you. You have people that will talk to you. But at the end of the day, until you open up your mouth and you tell that word to go, then it will not shift, because you are not contending over the prophetic promise of your life. In 2 Timothy, it talks about waging a good war over your words. That my issue with a lot of people is that they don't notice the war word. War. It's a war, right? And what happens in actual physical war? If you study it, there has to be strategy so that they can take these areas. There was this battle in America over Valley Forge, right? And if you study that, it's horrible, because they lose so many times. Like, they just keep getting overtaken, and then they fight to get it back, and then they're overtaken, right? It was a very pivotal moment in this wartime history, right? And so, thanks Cruz, thanks Kayvon. And so literally, the thing that made the difference was them strategizing another way. They had to surprise the enemy, right? They had to come around another way at this Valley Forge. And that's how they ultimately took the land and stayed there, because their strategy was different. And sometimes we are looking for a 1, 2, 3 step to cure our anxieties. We're looking for signs that are natural and practical, and we serve a supernatural God. And so you are asking for something outside of the confines of how he even operates. If you read scripture, you see that miracles are uncommon, that there are things that don't make sense. Even when he healed the blind man, he spit into dirt and put it on his eyes. Who had ever done that before? Why would that be the way? Who would ever think that that was okay, to put spit, human spit, in some dirt and put it on somebody's eyes and say, oh, now you're going to be healed and see? It doesn't make sense. And so you need to reconcile that your story may not make sense. You need to reconcile that it might not be one and done. You need to reconcile that there will be moments that you have to sacrifice. Your flesh has to burn. You have to die to self to be able to walk into the promise that God has set before you. It doesn't mean that it's not yours, but how willing are you to lay yourself on the altar to get to the promise of God for your life? I'm glad Kayvon setting you free. Yeah, basa. That's my whole purpose, huh? I'm low key like a deliverance minister, but I don't be saying it. How willing are you to die to self? How willing are you to operate in long suffering? How willing are you to lose in moments? It may seem like you're losing. You may seem like you have put out, right, You've put out everything. And it just goes back to remind me of the woman with the jars. And, you know, she cooks the last meal for a prophet. She doesn't have anything else. She's like, that's fine. And he's like, go gather all the jars. Go gather all the jars you can. And he didn't tell her how many. He didn't tell her that there wouldn't be, you know, a moment that they wouldn't be filled. Like he said, just go gather them. God's going to fill them, right? She put all the jars out, and as many jars as she had was filled with the oil that she needed. But are you willing to go gather it up when it looks like there's nothing and you can die? How willing are you? How willing are you? The scriptures say the foolish ways confound the wise. Some people on here are fighting logic regarding the thing that God is trying to build in your life. Logical thinking, I know as a society, we are told to think logically. But I mean, there are so many examples. Let's look at Abraham. He's the father of faith, right? He went to a land that he knew not of to be a father of many nations. That was his promise. But at the moment he received that, his wife was barren and they were already old. And so it's like, what? Like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, but he knew that God promised it to him. Now, he had a couple stumbles and falls, right? In the process of believing, he allowed his wife to try to manipulate the promise in that sector, and that's how we got the other kid, right? You know? That's what I like to call him, the other kid. We got the other kid going on because they just weren't willing to die to self in that moment to believe this thing, because how long had they sat in it? And there are some of you on here that, like me, have been getting prophetic words forever in your life, and it feels like this hurts because I'm now at the place where I've waited forever for you to come through on this. But there's no evidence that you haven't come through, but there's no evidence that anything is happening either, right? All I have is a word from you. And if all you have is a word from God, it is a great place to be in, because that means you have the foundation, the strong, sturdy, solid foundation to build a house upon. A strong, sturdy foundation to build a house upon, because God's word never returns void. It can never return void. Some people are like, oh, well, how do I contend for a promise? I just don't believe it. Find scriptures to back up the promise that was declared over you. Do not deny the space and the power of speaking the word over your situation. Told y'all I felt fiery tonight. Yeah, baba, so. Your mouth, I keep going back to this with Cinderella. Her mouth, she didn't feel, it's like in the book, they talk more about her feelings, right? She didn't feel robbed. In the book, she didn't, okay, I'm listening. Okay, Kara. She didn't feel robbed. She didn't feel denied. She didn't feel bad by never speaking against the wicked step family, right? She didn't feel bad about it, because her mother taught her to do good and be kind. So she stayed on her core values. She knew what her character was. And sometimes we use vicious and petty weapons of warfare to try to accomplish based on our feelings and emotions. But the Lord wants you to lay down your carnal weapons, and he wants you to pick up your supernatural weapons of warfare. What does your character look like in your contention? Are you cursing those that harm you? Are you speaking against those that harm you? Are you complaining about why God hasn't delivered you yet or giving you the thing you've desired? That's good, Melissa. I'm glad you woke up. It is important for you to look at and evaluate, how have I been fighting? What is the strategy in which I need to fight for this? And am I willing to do it? To wage war with the thing that's contending with me. Because the scriptures say that the Lord will contend with what contends with you. He wars with the wicked that contend against you. And I'll say this. Anytime you let God fight a battle, it's already a win. Because he can do things that you never have the ability to do. But if he turned the person's heart that was fighting against you, what would you do? Here's the last thing from the book that is really powerful too. They ask her, what would you like done with your evil stepmother and your wicked stepsisters? And some of the options were for them to be beheaded. Some of the options were for them to be imprisoned for the rest of their life. Some of the options were for them to turn around and be servants to her in the castle and in the kingdom. And her only request was that they not be able to live on her father's land. That she was able to keep her father's house, but that they could go freely from the kingdom in which she was going to be crowned to reign in. She didn't even choose to behead them after years of torment, after years of issues, after years of mental and emotional abuse. She just asked them to leave her kingdom. That comes from the seed that was her character that grew into be good, do good, and be kind. So what is in your character that at the moment of your enemy's demise, when given the option of being able to slander them, and when given the option of being able to destroy them, what does that look like? Would you seek revenge? Punishment? Deceitful wickedness? Or would you do good and be kind? Because sometimes we want people to reap the reward for the thing that they have done. And honestly, we serve a Redeemer who's redeemed us from things. So can he not redeem those? But I think it's a great example of how she also set a boundary line of like, you're not going to live in my father's house, right? Because that's my father's house. But I will spare your life. Because what the Lord can do against those that come against you is far greater than what you could ever do. Shar, if you're on here, I'll fight your battles if you let me. I'll fight your battles. And it is the hardest place to be in. Ask me how I know. It is the hardest place to be in. When people come against you and you cannot say anything about it. When people tell people that you're crazy, or you've done this, or you've done that. And God says, okay, just be silent. Or says, pray for them. Pray for who? What? Pray for the people that told me to sleep on the floor? Like, really, truly, think about that. Like, that's what they wouldn't even give her a blanket. So she had to sleep by the fire because she was cold. They ate large meals in front of her. In her father's house. They destroyed heirlooms that her mother had sewn and made for her. Like, these are some of the worst things that individuals could do. And all she said was, let them go freely from the kingdom. Get out of my father's house. And sometimes all we're tripping over is something that people said to us or said about us from their own place of misery. Yeah. But God says that he contends. That means argues. That means stands against. That means fights the thing that contends with you. He needs you to open up your mouth and claim what is yours. I don't know about you, but I just personally refuse in this season to be denied something because I will not stand in the face of what contends with me and call for help from God. I refuse to not go get strategy. I refuse it. I deny that space. And that's my desire for you. Deny the comfortability of quitting. There is something so comfortable in just lying in bed, watching a show, covering yourself with a blanket. Maybe your thing is eating ice cream or having some food. Maybe it's just going to your regular smegular routine that you've been used to, that's unfulfilling, that's killing you. But, at least I know what to expect. At least I know I won't get much of a fight. It's just boring. Right? At least no one in my family will say anything to me. At least none of my friends will say anything to me about being different, about trying these new things, about believing what God said over my life. Comfortability is a silent killer that you will wake up years later and wonder why. Why am I still here? How did I lose this time? Kara, Liz, leave me alone. She knows I'm in her soul. No, I was joking. But yeah, it's that serious. So if you feel like you're grasping at straws of time, you're probably in a place of comfortability and you've been stuck in a loop, replaying over and over and over and over and over again just what's okay, what's good enough, but not great. It's a good idea, but is it a God idea? It's kind of bringing something in, but is it the thing that God promised? And that's the thing. Sometimes we think we have like a second option, or we have this, how do I say this? This settle of like, okay, well, that would be good enough. If I could just get that, then it would be okay. But that within itself is cursing the promise, because I don't want anything else but than what God said for me. I don't want anything else than what God said is mine. If he said it, I want what he said. My will aligns with his will, and I come into divine alignment to say that it cannot be otherwise. So death to the second option. Death to the good idea. Breathe life into the only option in which God speaks to you. Because he said it. So yeah, that's it. I always do that and someone's like, really? One of my friends. Yeah, I've got like 2 minutes. So I am going to end this live. Yeah, there's no plan B. There's no other, because like Char just gets me stirred on the Game of Thrones. There's only one throne. There's only one Iron Throne. There's no plan B. There's no secondary kingdom to rule. That is your seat. Take your seat. By any means necessary. Contend with the thing. And take your seat. Really, just like that. When I move, you move. Just like that. When I move, you move. Just like that. Well, I'm down to do a Q&A if you guys want to. But I want to end this live because I want it to just be purely about the princesses, because I think this is going to be a thing. Because y'all don't want to hear me preach Sleeping Beauty. Aurora? Me and her got a thing going on. But yeah, let me know. I have 40 seconds, so let me know if you want the Q&A, so I don't have to waste my time or yours. You can ask me about anything too. I'll fight your battles if you let me. That's from Jesus. 20 seconds. I'll fight your battles. Yeah, because you're awake now? Okay. Hold on.